Thank you, everyone. Welcome back to Hack Asia 2022, Innovate the Sustainable Future Day 2. So today I'll also continue to be your MC. This is Janice from Innovate Jardines. So yesterday, all of you have heard from different speakers to get some inspiration and ideation, kind of like topics to actually help you think about what you are gonna be doing for your venture idea. I know that some of you also met with your mentors and the sponsoring businesses to actually get to know more about the challenge statements in order for you to shape the right solution to help us solve some of the sustainability challenges that we are facing. So today, our focus is really on empowering you with the right technology skills to help you build prototype. So today we have speakers lining up for you to talk about different technology topics, as well as teaching you some hands-on skills on how do you really build on different kind of solutions, as well as how can you eventually build a prototype for your idea. So maybe let me introduce our first speaker. So today we'll also have Microsoft joining us. So Microsoft experts will actually walk you through how do you really build on Azure, as well as how do you use Power Platform to help turn your ideas into actual things that you can show to the judges on your final day. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are an entrepreneur, you should learn some of these skills to help you really turn ideas into reality. So today we'll have two speakers, Mary Chang and also Frankie. So maybe without further ado, maybe I will pass the time to Frankie. You can introduce about yourself as well as take on the stage.
Okay,
The time is yours.
Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Hack Asia Enablement sections. My name is Frankie Lai. Let me introduce myself a bit. I'm a cloud solution architect based in Microsoft Hong Kong. I'm covering the data and AI solutions, and most of the time, and my major duties to work with my customer to enable and accelerate the data and AI capabilities in the cloud platform. We work together with our customer to talk about the initiative and how to leverage the cloud resources that help my customer to develop their solutions. My customers are in different industry, just like FSI, retails, manufacturing, healthcare, and etc. So I'm glad to participate the Hack Asia this year to share about the fundamental and a high-level overview of Microsoft Azure. That's our cloud environment. I hope this giving you the ideas that how you can leverage the Azure environment to build your hackathon projects. In Microsoft Azure, we invent with purpose in how we think about it, what we deliver to you, but also enable you to invent with purpose. Okay, let's get started. Microsoft Azure is one of the most popular cloud platforms that provide many of components and resources and different platform services that you can find and use in our marketplace. This is the high-level map of the class of services that we offer. We have over 200 products and services for building the cloud infrastructure, its applications, the data solutions, AI and machine learning, and also the development tools provided. From a developer perspective, it's about being able to build on your own terms with the frameworks, the tools that you want to ensure you have the freedom and that flexibility to be able to work successfully. And also, it's be able to deploy your applications with qualities and conversion every time. On top of that, we have a lot of serverless resources that helps you to build the workload. You can imagine that when you build your applications and require and manage the databases, you can just provision the databases with few clicks. And you are not required to configure or consider the underlying infrastructure, the networkings, and also the storage. You can use the AI and machine learning to create a model or use a model built from the open source platform. you can use the analytics technologies. You can connect the IoT devices into the data platform and visualize the real-time data in the dashboard. All those stuff are managed by our platform, and it helps you minimize the time and effort for provisioning a resources. And it is easily spin up when you require additional computation resources within a couple of minutes. You will see we have the development tools to the core infrastructure and part services that we offer. We have Machine Learning Studio to build your ML projects, do the experiments, manage your model in a single environment. You can open and collaborate open sources materials in GitHub. You can easily to build your applications and dashboard in the Power Platform. In coming next sections, Mary, she is our specialist and will give you a sharing the ideas for how the Power Platform can help. Last one, you might notice we have extended to the edge the ability to run application code in the cloud, but also in that seamless, consistent rate in the edge device as well. Overall, this gives you the scope of what Azure as a platform and services can do for you. So, the very important things for you to know to how to get started with the Azure platform. There are two options. First, create an Azure free trial account, or for this year, we provided an Azure Pass with the startup credit for the Hack Asia winning teams. Okay, in January, you can create an Azure free account for self-learning purposes. You can open a browser and visit the link azure.microsoft.com/en-us/free. It will navigate to the portal and allow you to create a free account with 12 months of free services. Let me show the web pages. Okay, as you can see, it provides 200 USD Azure credits as start for you to explore the services provided in Azure. There are some popular services are free for 12 months, and 40% other services are always free. You can scroll down and see all free services provided. For example, you can use Azure Functions to process 1 million requests every month, or create 10 web, mobile, or API app services every month. You can click on the See All Services button for details. It will be very useful for building your hackathon projects. Okay, going back to the top of the screen, you can simply create your Azure free account by clicking on the Start Free button. Then it will take you into the sign-in process with your Microsoft account. If you have not, you can create a new one for yourself. After sign-in, fill in all your profile information and also your credit card information for identity verifications. After that, your Azure account is ready. Okay, the second option. For the Hack Asia this year, we will provide additional credits for you to build your projects with a Azure Passes. This alternative allows you to create an Azure subscription without create a free trial account. Let me quickly walk through the step. The step to redeem your Azure Pass promo code is simple. You can open a browser and navigate to www.microsoftazurepass.com. We got many feedbacks previously that you cannot redeem the code during the activations. It was due to other logins pieces with browser cachings and caused error during the activation step. It is recommended you close all the browsers and open a new in private browser sections. So next step, just click on the Start button to get started. Enter your account information and select Sign In. If you have not, you can also create a new one just like outlook.com email address. So after that, you can click on Confirm if the correct email address is listed. And then you can enter your promo code in the promo code boxes and click the Claim promo code. The next is to activate your subscriptions. When the redemption process is completed, it will redirect to the sign-up pages. You can enter your account information and then click next and click the agreement checkbox and also click the sign up button. The process is just take a few minutes to complete the request. Your Azure subscription is ready now, and you can start using the Azure subscriptions. Okay? During the project development, you can also check the balance of your Azure credits on this link provided on the screen. Microsoft Azure sponsorship.com/balance. So that's all the registration processes. For winning teams, I think you might get the promo code or it will be distributed to you very soon. Please feel free to let us know if you have further questions. Okay, let's move on, have a quick overview of Azure Portal. We can navigate to the portal.azure.com, log in with your Azure account. Let me show you on my browser. Okay, so this is the main dashboard. When you log in to the Azure Portal, you can customize the dashboard to pin some frequently used resources or create a markdown here. You can just customize your dashboard as you imagine. Okay, so to create a services or resources, let's take a look for creating resources on Azure. We can click on the menu bar on the top left corner. Then you can create resources. Okay, there's a create resources button here. In this view, we provide all the services or tools for you to get started. You can select based on the different categories, or simply you can search the resources you want. For example, databases. Then you can simply click on the resources, then create. For each resources, we are not going through for each step today, but this is simply too easier to create resources that based on some information you provided. For example, I click on the SQL database, we click on the create. Then just fill in the information, for example, what is the database name, the server name, and the computation resources. Then for the step, this is easier to you to create the databases. As you may not have an idea or not familiar with Azure services, today I'd like to share with you and introduce some of the resources might help for your development, especially for the data and AI components. Okay, the Microsoft Cloud is sustainable, and when we talk about the sustainabilities, it is not just about our carbon footprint of our own data centers, but creating an entirely new business process categories to help every organization address their very urgent needs. Based on this, we're grouping them together based on the modern works and business applications. We design the infrastructure on demand on request. We innovate digital and apps for data and AI, and also security considerations. Since this is a hackathon, and let's think about how developing an application for your own solutions. To start with data and AI core enablement, we're thinking about the scenario for selecting the workload for your specific topics. First, we discover and understand the foundational topics as a high level. We collaborate and team up the data engineer, the data analyst, and data scientists to define the process. We discuss the privacy and security considerations and also access control. We think about the development and the deployment process. We discuss with the application owner to how embedding the solution as well. Then we can identify which data workload topics to be adopted. Basically, we have data warehousing and big data, machine and deep learning, and streaming and IoT. Finally, we come up the action plan and move on to project kickstart. Today, let me give you the ideas for the data warehousing and big data topics. Okay, first, let's share some developer tools that you may interest. There are 6 tools showing on the screen, but you can find out more on Azure. Azure App Configurations allow you to separate configuration from code, store all the settings for your applications, and secure their access in one place. As a best practice, applications configuration setting should be kept externally to its executable, and with this from its one-time environment or an external resources. For example, you're building the microservices based on Azure Kubernetes services or other containerized apps deployed in one or more geographicals. Or for serverless apps, which include Azure Functions or other event-driven stateless compute apps, is also work best. Azure Status Studio is a cross-platform database tool for you to build database solutions. It offers source control integrations and integrated terminal with built-in tracks of query result sets and customizable dashboards. Visual Studio is a powerful tool to develop applications and services and tools for different languages, just like C#, C++, Python, JavaScript, and R. For different platforms and devices. Usually this is for business or enterprise professional, and there's subscription-based charging is required. So for the individual or student, we can leverage Visual Studio Code. This is a lightweight standalone source code editor that's run on your desktop or laptop. It supports Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It comes with built-in support for JavaScript, TypeScript, and Node.js. And also, has many extensions for other languages, just like C#, Java, Python, PHP, and one-time such as .NET. Azure DevOps provides the developer services for allowing the teams to collaborate on code development, build and deploy applications. It supports a set of processes that bring developers and the contributors together to collaborate to go for the developed software. It is widely used in an enterprise to sustain their development lifecycle. With GitHub Actions for Azure, you can create a workflow that you can set up in your repository to build, to test, packaging, release, and deploy to Azure. It supports Azure services, including Azure App Service or Azure Functions. You can create a GitHub account. It is completely a free account. You can join the community and grab the useful templates there. For example, you can find the templates to deploy your database or app service works into the Azure from the link. Let me show you. Okay, this is a GitHub environment. So there's already have many different workflows samples right here. For example, when we click on the machine learning, we can follow the step to create the machine learning resources based on some template. For example, right here, we can create the AML workspace. Then this page will show you the guidance how to leverage the template to simply create the resources for the Azure machine learning. I think you can take a time to have a look on this GitHub environment that help you to build the resources right there. For a typical data flow scenario, we classify them into 4 processes: ingest, store, preparations and training, model and serving. Let's take a look for each related Azure resources. Okay, for the ingest options, big data requires a service that can orchestrate and operate processes to refine and store of the raw data into a actionable business insight. Azure Data Factory is a managed cloud services that's built for this complex hybrid ETL, or we can call this ELT, extract load transform, and doing some data integration projects. IoT Hub is a managed services hosted in the cloud that act as a central message hub for communications, between and IoT applications, and its attached devices. You can connect millions of devices and their package solutions securely. Azure Event Hub. This is a big data streaming platform and event injection services. It can receive and process millions of events per second. Data sent to an event hub can be transformed and stored by using any real-time analytics provider or storage adapters. The, the scenario where you can think about using event hubs, you can think about fault detections, application logging, using for live dashboards, or also using for the transaction processing. For the store options, there's many of store options right there. Azure Blob Storage is Microsoft object storage solutions for the cloud. Blob Storage is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured data, such as text or binary data. Blob Storage is designed for serving images or documents directly to a browser, or storing files for distributed access, streaming videos and audios, storing data for backup or restore purpose, for DR, and for archiving. And also, it can also for the analysis for by the on-premises or Azure hosted services. This is widely used in a cloud environment. Azure Data Lake Storage converges the capabilities of Azure Blob Storage. Additionally, Data Lake Storage provides a hierarchy file system, the file level security, and a scale. Because this is built on top of the Blob Storage, the storage capacity and the transactional costs are very slow. Are very low. Okay, sorry. This is still ideal for the big data workloads. Azure SQL Database is fully managed platform as a service database engine that handles most of the database management functions, such as upgrading, patching, backups, and monitoring. This not require additional administration considerations. Past capabilities that are built into the Azure SQL databases enable you to focus on the domain-specific database administrations and optimizations activities. That's very critical for our customer business. And they also have different RDBMS solutions, just like for MySQL or for PostgreSQL, that you can select based on your needs. Azure Cosmos DB is a fully managed NoSQL database for modern app development. This is very low latency response times and automatic and instant scalabilities that can guarantee the speed at any scale. It supports open source APIs and SDK for popular languages. As a fully managed services, Azure Cosmos DB takes database administrations off your hands with automatic management for patching as well. It also handles capacity management with cost-effective serverless and auto-scaling options. Azure Synapse Analytics is an enterprise analytics services that accelerate time to insight across the data warehouse and big data system. Azure Synapse brings together the SQL technologies used the enterprise data warehousing, Spark technology used for big data. You have a data explorer for log and time series analytics, pipeline for data integrations and ETL or ELT, and deep integration with other Azure services such as Power BI, Cosmo DB, and Azure Machine Learning. So for Azure Databricks, in the preparations and training options there, Azure Databricks is a data analytics platform optimized for the Microsoft Azure Cloud Service platform. Azure Databricks offer free environment for developing data applications, including like Databricks SQL, Databricks data science and engineering, and also Databricks machine learning. It is best for big data processing using Spark, SQL, Python, Scala, Java, or R to develop the workloads. Next, Azure Stream Analytics. This is a real-time analytics and event processing engine designed to analyze and process high volume of fast streaming data. It helps from multiple sources altogether. It can transform a stream of data into a SQL with no infrastructure or extra information from different input sources, including just like devices, the sensor, the social media feeds, and applications. This pattern can be used to trigger actions and initiate workflow, such as creating alerts, feeding information to a reporting, or storing transformed data for later use. Also, Stream Analytics are available on Azure IoT Edge runtime, enabling you to process the data on IoT devices. Right here, Azure SQL Database and Synapse Analytics. This is as a data store to sustain to help on the transformations process. The last piece, model and serving options. Power BI is a collection of software services, apps, and connectors that work together to turn your unrelated source of data into a visualized, maybe or into an interactive insight. Power BI lets you easily connect to your data source, visualize and discover what is important, and share that with anyone or everyone you want. Azure Analytics Services is a managed platform as well that provide enterprise-grade data models in the cloud. This using mashup or modern features to combine data from multiple data sources. It helps define the metrics and secure your data in a tabular data model. The data model provides an easier and faster way for users to perform an ad hoc data analysis using the tools just like Power BI. Azure SQL Database and Synapse Analytics here again to access a data store to serve the data modeling for the applications. Okay, on the screen, this is just one of the reference architecture. It shows you how to be integrate the resources that we mentioned previously. It's compile all the structured or unstructured or maybe the semi-structured data into by using the Azure Data Factory pipelines that go into the Azure Data Lake storage. And also it leverages data in Azure Data Lake storage to perform the scalable analytics with the Azure Databricks Spark engine to achieve the data cleansing and transform the data. We can build operational reports and analytical dashboard on top of the dedicated SQL pool. This comes with the Synapse to derive the insight from the data and using the analysis services to serve thousands of end users to access. It finally can send the real-time data into web application for downstream. So, okay, we have understanding for the data solutions in the Azure Data Platform. Then we can move to some AI scenarios in the real world. The scenario is from Schneider Electric. In Nigeria, one of the biggest challenges today is power supply. To give you some context, the populations of Nigeria is around 180 million of people. Only half have access to electricity. In fact, 60% of health clinics lack reliable electricity. And further, 65% of primary schools have no electricity at all. Schneider Electric is transforming the lives and the opportunities of millions of people in Nigeria by providing reliable, sustainable, and affordable energies. Let's have a look. Today, about 1.2 billion people in the world live with the electricity, and other billion or people have unreliable power for cooking and cleaning. Schneider Electric is transforming the lives for millions of people in Nigeria by partnering with Microsoft and the Lagos State Electricity Board to provide sustainable solar power to over 200 schools and clinics. In this sharing, you can see a use case scenario for the predictive maintenance, which built with Azure IoT. Schneider Electric have been able to provide reliable, affordable energies to residents in Nigeria. IoT offers Schneider Electric the ability to remote monitor and manage the solar panels, and through a global infrastructure dashboard, the user can view locations across Nigeria and see the KPIs across the entire region, monitoring the overall health and performance of the solar solutions. The grid asset maintenance system tracks and for the health and performance metrics against the expected and forecast benchmark. The dashboard indicates that there are critical issues with the batteries or the solar panels, and it is compared to the forecast analytics. This shows that this is the current trend that could lead for the potential outage or putting the patients at risk. The first alert shows the solar panels to not covering the optimal capacity due to sand and debris on the panel. If this trend continues, they won't be able to keep up with demand. We can also see the batteries are starting to cover overheat due to the lack of ventilations around the batteries. With this information, the user can send the notification so the site manager can adjust the issue. Let's take a look at their connected solar solutions. Sorry, give me a second. Today, Schneider Electric is supplying the electricity over 200 schools and health clinics. Many of their locations are extremely remote and have never had electricity. They are equipped with the solar panel, the battery banks, and connected to inverters that provide the continuous supply of electricity. This provides remote monitoring and device management is critical. Monitoring is done through the global infrastructure dashboard as shown on the screen. Here we see the most important KPIs across the entire regions and monitoring the overall health and performance of our infrastructure. Alerts and escalate issues are sorted by the severity of our attention. This is from the left side, the alerts part. Okay, at the top of the list, this is clinics showing a critical warning. Let's select the location and see what's going on. At the site level, we can see the schema view of the facilities. All access are tracked for health and performance metrics against their expected and forecast net benchmark. This data is collected by Azure IoT Solutions, Azure and Microsoft AI Predictive to predict the future performance. We can see here some firmware and setting updates that we can push down to the equipment on site. With the checklist, we can click on the button. We can keep this access up to date like level before with the new device management capabilities. We no longer have to send the technicians to the remote site again. The dashboard also indicates the critical issues with the batteries and the solar panels. The forecast analysis show that the current trend could lead to potential outage. Let's have a look. It's a real-time data from the sensor, as you can see, the device and the predicted future trends and the behavior. Okay, so the first alert showed that the solar panels are not charging at their optimal capacity. Okay, it's going down. If in this trend continues, it won't be able to keep up with demand. We can also see that the batteries are starting overheat. This is temperature. Okay, continue to operate like this will greatly reduce the battery services. Okay, let's click on the notifications. The system automatically creates a notifications with all the relevant information. The recommended actions and instruction can send them to the site manager for immediate actions. Schneider Electric has not only provided the continuous or reliable energies to the clinics, it's also simplified the maintenance. With this case scenario, the core component including Azure IoT, Power BI, and also machine learning. This is a very successful use case for we enjoy the benefit of the technologies. Let me going back to my slide. Okay, from the previous use case, we have mentioned the predictions model for fault detections. And the machine learning model can be trained by Azure Machine Learning. Azure ML is a cloud service for accelerating and managing the machine learning project lifecycle. We can use it for train and deploy models. You can create a model in Azure ML or use a model built for an open source platform such as PyTorch or TensorFlow. It aims to start from low code to code-first experience. It provides a drag and drop interface, a hosted notebook environment, or automated machine learning, we call AutoML. With Azure Machine Learning, it helps to accelerate model development with these features and for the algorithm selections. AutoML provides the ability to quickly determine the best model for data and this to be analyzed. We have the web interface called Azure ML Studio. It's bringing together data scientist capabilities and ML access into a single web pane that streamlines the machine learning workflow.
Hello, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your sharing for the Schneider Electric case.
Yep.
I have a question from the floor. Can we know how to access the Azure system? Can you illustrate a little bit to the audience here?
Okay, as we shared previously, we have the Azure portal environment allow you to create the resources on our cloud platform. So there will be, you can create just like the Schneider Electric use case scenario. They mainly use the Azure machine learning to create the prediction model. Coming up, I would like to introduce a little bit about the machine learning that's running on our Azure environment. I hope this gives you an idea that how the Azure ML that help to create the use case for yours.
Thank you. It would be great if we can have some demo as well.
Sure.
If you in your process.
Sure. That's a great idea. I will show you the machine learning workspace that in the coming slide. Yeah, thank you. So just go back into the slide. Just very simple. I mentioned also this time we are talking about the machine learning on Azure. So actually we break it into what customer needs to the ML solutions. There are 5 key assets. We have pre-trained models for visions, speech, and language recognitions. We have different tools and supporting different popular frameworks. And also we have the service to support data science and development teams and the infrastructure to support and accelerate the deep learning. Okay, maybe let me jump into the demo of the Azure ML. Give me a second, please. Okay, I would like to give you one more slide about the AutoML, what this is. Okay, for machine learning, overfitting and imbalanced data are common pitfall when you build a machine learning model. By default, Azure ML with the Auto ML capabilities that are provided on the screen, it's help you to identify the risks and implement the best practice to help to mitigate them. The approach to Auto ML is simple. With the provided dataset, we define the goal and apply the constraint, then start the training process. The engine itself creates a number of pipelines in a parallel that try different algorithms and parameters for you. The service iterative ML algorithm paired with the feature selections, where each iteration process a model with a training score. The higher the score, just like on the screen, there's a 90% of one of the scenario, the algorithm. It will select it and stop when it hits the highest scoring, and it's the criteria to define the experiment. Okay, let me show you our Azure Machine Learning workspace. Okay, this is the interface of our Azure ML Studio. As you can see, these are different collaborations right here to define how to create a model and experience. On the screen and the main window, it shows the previously the runtime of the compute we used it and the model we have. So let me introduce a bit. On the left-hand side is some groupings running on the resources. We have the offer sections to let you build, for example, the Auto ML, or you can design for your own of the machine learning scenario. It have the access area. We show about the data set and also the experience. And the manage, we'll talk about the compute as well. So let's go into the data set part. You can easily simply to add your data set into the ML workspace. You can upload your files into the environment. You can connect it with different data store that on your informations or data in a storage account. Or maybe you can using some open data set that to start your experiment. For example, I have one uploaded data source into the environment. I will show you in the next step. And other important things you may have to know for executing the ML experiments, you have to need the computation resources that we can define the compute instance right here. That's create VM. That's one your workload. For example, I define this demo for compute 001. Okay, we define the locations. We can select the VM types you want. For in general, we can use the CPU processing. But if you have going to do the deep learning, we can select using the GPU processor. And the next one, you can define the VM sizing because it's based on the capabilities of the Azure environment. We have different VM resources there. You can select start from lower end to a high end VM. I recommend that we can start with a lower end VM sizing. For example, we use the standard DSV version 2. It's 4 cores and also 14 gigabytes memory and some storage over there. Okay, after that, you can just create the Azure platform will provision a VM for you for the coming ML experiments. Okay, I'm not start create that because I already have one right here for the demo sections. Okay, so for you to start simply start for create a machine learning model, you can go with the designer. You can create based on some PPU components we can use, or you can start from say just a subset things that you can design for your scenario. The Azure ML workspace is an interactive experience that you can drag and drop the resources into the main window. For example, we can select some data set. Okay, for example, I already upload one of the data source from my machines to the environment. Or you can leverage some of the sample data sets that you can say, try have experience that how to start up a project. So for example, this time I select the automobile price data. This is a raw data. I simply drag and drop into the windows right here. With Azure ML, it can allow you to do some simply data transformations. You can just select the transformations here to do, for example, you can do the clean on the missing data. You like to convert some files there. Okay. For example, I like to say this time, let me see. Maybe I'm trying to speed the data. Okay, because some of the raw data will have to set for the training and modeling piece. So speed data allow me to separate the data to do the training model. And the next part of data, we can do the checking or testing that evaluate the model. So speed data allow us to do with a simply do the separate the data. Well, by default, it separates 50% of data from the two down path, downside path. So it can be changed to, for example, for doing the model training, we can set up to 0.7. This is about 70% of data will go into model training. Okay. I will show you one of the scenario after that, but I would like to let you know, once after you set up the scenario pattern right here, we can just simply submit the execution that. Okay, so one more thing I missed it. We have to select the Azure ML compute instance right here because we to define the actual computation powers to run the workload. So this time I select my testing machines, AML demo 001. Okay, so we can start to submit to execute the process. We can set up the pilot run. For example, I do this time to start the demo. For example, demo pilot run 00 run. Okay, so you can add the job description right here. Then we can just click on the submit button. Okay, back into the designer view. Okay, it takes some time. So you can see in the main panel, you can see there's some process. Now the data is getting from the data source and going to do the speed data process is in the running status. Okay, so this is just a very simple to design and kickstart your ML experiments. Let me show you that I have a demo right here. Okay. Okay, this is a simply experiment right here that we can ingest the data source. We can filter some useful data to start for the training. We can speed the data. And from the Azure ML workspace, it provides some predefined models right here to help you to start from some algorithm that easier to start with. For example, this time I use the decision forest regressions. So there's many different like regression tests, clustering or classifications we can select from right here, in the selection panel. And then we go to the training model parts. Sorry. Okay. The data will go into the training model. As we mentioned, the speed data, we separate the data, and you can say for 70% of data will go into the training model. After the training, we like to do the scoring. Okay, we have the model right here. We have this remaining data set to start for the scoring part. Okay, after that, we can evaluate the model with some expected output. For example, right here, we have the information for the evaluation result. Okay, there's some scoring right here to let you know there's a which kind of data modeling will help you to decide the best fit. Okay, so one more thing I'd like to let you know is about the AutoML. AutoML is a very easier to define if you have not too much uh, information. That's how to set up the machine learning model. You can just simply click on the new AutoML run, and then you can select the data set. For example, you can upload your data set from local or from the storage account. This time I used the sample data sets, just upload yesterday or maybe this early morning. Okay, once we have the selected data set, we can define the configuration one. Okay, previously, oh sorry, let me create a new one. For example, demo 1004 maybe. We define the target column. For example, you can select from the source. You can select the column, for example, using the right string informations. We select the computations again. For example, we can define the compute cluster or compute instance. Then, after that, we can go. This is a very interesting part that I let you know. For the AutoML, we do some predefined classifications or regression model right here. So the beauty of the AutoML, you don't need to do to define the actual algorithm to be used. They will go through all the algorithm to test it for you, okay, without additional selections of the algorithm. Okay, so and next, so just define the validation type, then just finish. Okay, it will start for the AutoML one. With this simple experience that allow you to understand how AutoML to help you to define the pipelines right here. Okay, let me go back into the previous one. I have the experience right here. This is the my previous tracking for one of the AutoML scenario. Okay, we can see there's information for the last execution time. We have the information that you can check back or the experiment itself. Okay. The last thing I'd like to share with you is the data model can be go into containerized services just like Kubernetes services or go into the storage account. That will help you to make use of the downstream data to be used. For example, this time I can go into the web services output. Maybe it can provide the API connector to the modeling and start with your model selection. Okay.
Hi, Frankie. I have one
Yep.
more question from the floor. So, do we have free access on the resources you just mentioned? A demo on the screen.
Yes, with the and earlier in our presentations, we recommend two options for you. You can create an Azure free trial accounts that allow you to access the Azure environment. Thus, provide you some free credits to start for the experience on the machine learning areas. So I will recommend that you can start with the trial account first and have a look and go into the machine learning studio. That will get you very helpful to understand and experience on the our Azure platform. I hope this answer your questions.
Thank you. And we will send out the email for the trial account for your part, right?
Yeah. The information will dispatch to every team for the hackathon, and it will give you the method and steps that how to be create an Azure trial account. Or also for the winning teams that we also provide the Azure Pass that with the promotion code that you can start with to create the Azure accounts. I think this will send out to you very soon. So if you did not receive the email, just give us some little bit time. I think we will send out to later today. Okay. So just like to check any questions from the ground again.
Yes. So the audience,
Yep.
if any of you want to code, and then you can post it in the chat, and then we will send the code for you after the section. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. I'm, for my presentation, I would like to go to the last part for you. Okay. So, at last, we have covered the Azure environment and some AI real use case and some scenarios. To moving forward and help you to prepare your hackathon projects, you can learning from our learning resources to help you build your team skills to use the Azure more competence. Microsoft offer a comprehensive collections of training options that empower you and your team to learn to fit your best. We have many of the self-paced learnings materials that with some hands-on experience or some recorded technical contents on our Learn TV. So you can visit microsoft.com/learn to explore more. So thank you for your time today. I hope this helped for you to start the hackathon projects more easily. So happy learning. Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Frankie, for the sharing. So I know that we have covered quite a lot of different grounds just now on very different topics. So I think like while you learn it, there's also a chance for you to start practicing it. So later we'll share with you the code for you to actually start building and prototyping on the Azure platform. So upcoming next, we also have another speaker. Hi, Marie.
Hello.
Hi, great to have you joining us today.
Thanks for having us as well.
Great. So can you share a bit more, maybe like what are you going to talk to us about, and maybe like how the participants should expect from your sharing later?
Absolutely. So in this hour, we will cover the Power Platform. So for those of you who don't know, the Power Platform is actually our low-code suite of development technologies. So in particular for Hackathon, we want you to be able to create prototype very quickly, rapidly, so that you can visualize your ideas to the judges.
So that's actually very important because like ultimately for Hackasia, right, it's not just about the idea, it's about actually making it happen. So I guess like in a week time, you cannot build like a fully functioning solution, but if you know the techniques on how do you build a prototype and iterate from there, you will increase your chance of winning in the actually hackathon events. And even if you're actually not a Hackasia participant shortlisted, there's actually the need for you to learn how to prototype quickly so that you can actually have your solutions up and maybe pitch to other forums, for example, your business management, and maybe even like the external public. So maybe I'll pass the time to you to actually talk about this very important topic.
Thanks a lot, Janice.
Thank you.
Now, let's set the stage first. Now, today industries are facing a lot of challenges. In particular, when they try to innovate, there are a lot of blockers and a lot of the problem that we might be facing. For example, one reason is that there is actually a surging digital demand, and to combat to this, we actually see that there is a lack of technical talent, and also often it takes a lot of time to build a software development from the ground up. So in this sense, to combat to this sort of challenges, the solving solution isn't to make everyone a new developer, or it isn't to actually spend tons and tons of money. But instead, we actually start from the technology-wise. So we want to have a low-code development platform so that anyone with or without IT background will be able to create the solutions, whether it's a custom application, whether it's chatbot, whether it's report or dashboard to help you visualize your data, to help you gain analytics from your data. Now, according to a Gartner report, actually by 2025, most of the application, more than 70% of the enterprise applications are going to be built using a low-code technology. Hence, here is why we have the Power Platform. The Power Platform is something that the business needs today. It is something that will have high productivity. It is low-code so that everyone will be able to create a solution that helps to tackle their own business problem. Now, give you a bit of high-level overview of what the Power Platform actually includes. We have 4 core services. We have the Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and also Power Virtual Agent. The Power Apps allows you to create custom applications. Power Automate allows you to create automated workflows that connect to 2 or more services. So you can imagine I might have any data sync, or I could have a scheduled job that I have to perform during the nighttime. This can be done via the Power Automate. Power BI is a very, very important component to this. Imagine we have a vast amount of data. How do we actually make sense of this data? The Power BI actually helps you to do this by allowing you to track, visualize your data in a way that actually makes sense to the manager team. Now, apart from the core 3 services that I mentioned, the last part of it is actually called the Power Virtual Agent. So this allows you to create conversational chatbot so that you can tackle your ad hoc queries, or so that you can actually free up your staff from answering all these mundane tasks. The common theme of all of these services is that it is low code, so you can leverage a low code interface to create all these applications. In the past, it might take months or even weeks for users to create an application, but now this development time actually cuts down to a lot. So later on, I'll be showing you some demo on how we can actually create it. So how do we actually create application using a drag and drop interface, like how we used to create PowerPoint? But we can actually add in some formulas like the Excel-like formula to make the application functional. Another core part of the Power Platform is actually integration with other systems. So apart from the core 4 service that we provide, we also keep a good mind in terms of integrating with other data sources. So at the end of the day, we do not want to create another data silo. So we do have a lot of data connectors. We have more than 500 plus data connectors that help you connect to your current services. So for example, we could connect to Azure, we can connect to any standalone applications like Salesforce or other ERP, CRM systems that you might have. Or even put it simplistically, if you have any data warehouse, maybe a SQL server, we can also help to service out this data using the data connectors. So let's focus on how we can actually build solution fast. Let's talk about Power Apps first. The Power Apps allows you to create and build, share applications very quickly. We can leverage any pre-built templates. We can leverage the drag and drop simplicity and also quick deployment to allow any people with or without IT background to be able to build their own solutions. And these solutions can actually have very advanced functionality. For example, we could have a GPS integrated, we could have AI integrated into these applications. Additionally, we actually have, so users are actually authenticated using the Azure Active Directory, so that imagine in the company, you can actually have different roles, different users configured so that we can actually share these applications to them. So we actually leverage the same single sign-on that we have. So just like how you actually log into the O365 service, now we can actually create or use applications leveraging the same login system we have. Apart from that, a key part is that once these applications are deployed, we can actually use it across web, across mobile, whether it's Android or iOS, and even in Windows systems. So you can think of Power Apps as the visualization layer. So it doesn't really store your data, but it is where we can actually service out our data and where we can actually visualize them and make them into something interesting, something more interactive. So it is really the application layer. Now, typically in the application design, we might also integrate other parts like the workflows, or of course, the more important part is the data. So there are two ways we can actually connect to the data. The first one is actually to leverage our out-of-the-box inbuilt Dataverse. So you can think of Dataverse as the data system that already comes with the Power Platform. Apart from that, if you already have some other systems in mind, like SQL Server or O365, SharePoint, Salesforce, or other services you have in mind, we can actually create connections with this sort of systems, leveraging the out-of-the-box data connectors. So the use case that we can actually build using the Power Platform varies. It can be as simple as to creating a form that extend your O365 or your SharePoint, to more complicated system that involve integrating with your legacy systems or departmental solution or even mission critical end-to-end solution. To give you some samples in terms of what sort of applications we are talking at. So one of the use cases that we have is actually a cash flow management system. So in the past, So this system in particular is used by store managers and store operators. In the past, they have a lot of paper forms that they have to fill in. So day in, day out, they have to actually fill in the daily shift form. They have to fill in any petty cash information. And once they actually fill in this paper form, they have to hand this in person to the store manager for approval. So a lot of papers is involved in this process, and the customer is not able to track what is happening. So suppose if someone actually lost a piece of paper, then they would actually lose the history completely. Now, migrating this paper-based system into Power Apps is something that really helps them to transform their operation. So currently, they actually have 2 application interfaces that allow users to submit their form entry daily. They also have an approval system that ties to this application so that approvers will be able to actually approve the submission. So this makes it less ambiguous in terms of who is responsible to transferring the data. Now, of course, the key part of this is that at the end of the day, we want to visualize and gain the insight into why is this important? Why are we actually proving that this is an important system? So we do have a dashboard to allow tracking and also analysis of data. So this is a very simple application. The next one that I want to show you is actually a frontline inspection application that is used by a public transport operator in the UK. So key to highlight here, so apart from the application interface, you can see that there are some out-of-the-box native features that perhaps when you create your Power Apps, this is something that you could have in mind. And you can just drag this into your application to make it more functional, to make it more exciting. So some of the example includes a map. So the application will be able to track your GPS location if needed. There would also be other native features, for example, camera, QR code scanner that you can actually integrate into your application. Now, Frankie actually mentioned a bit about the IoT, and I'm sure IoT isn't something new to anyone, but how do we actually make sense of this data? How do we actually, apart from visualizing this data on the application, perhaps we could actually have IoT alert that can actually be triggered and fire off notification. And this is where the beauty of Power Platform comes in, because we'll be able to integrate with all of these different systems, for example, Azure IoT Central, or other database that you have that might be able to fire alerts to us. Now, I've talked a lot about the overview of the Power Apps, and I've also showcased how we can actually, some of the use cases that we have. Now, if you already have your laptop with you, and we can actually navigate to make.powerapps.com to start the development process. So let me walk you through how do we actually create an application. So we can actually go to make.powerapps.com. If you already have a work account that you can leverage, then it will be very simple for you. So let me just drag the page here. If you navigate to make.powerapps.com, you'll be prompted to sign in with your work or school email. So once you have actually signed in, then you'll be able to see the environment, and you can actually kickstart your application creation process from there. So it's very simple. It's a web portal, and once you log it in, so currently I have already signed in, but if you do not have a working email, a work or school email, we can actually assign, so you can actually sign up for this sort of emails later on. So I'll show you later how we can do that. Now, imagine you already are able to log into this portal, then we can actually see and create applications from there. There are multiple ways of doing it. We can actually create it from scratch. So you can see we can actually create a Canvas app from blank. So the application that I'll mention mainly in this presentation is actually the Canvas app. So let's put that in mind first. Apart from creating it from blank, it's also possible to actually start from the data. So if you already have the data schema in mind, you already have data like something that you already have in Excel, you can actually get started with the data. So you can automatically generate an application using this method. The third part is also a very good part. So we actually have a lot of templates that you can already use. So for example, maybe I'm thinking about a training application, then I can actually leverage the template here so that I can just create an application here and change it however I want.
Mary, I have a question from the floor. So, what is the link of the portal? Can you share it also?
Sure. So this is actually make.powerapps.com. So if you cannot find it, the easier way is actually you can just type in Power Apps into any of your web browser, and then you should be able to see it, and then you should be able to sign into the service.
Yes, I've got one very quick question from the audience, Matthew, and he's asking how easy to program with low code for this Power App.
Okay, of course, that depends on the complexity of the application. Now, this is actually a good question. Let me give you a scenario. So, for example, let's say we want to create a food ordering application. Let's say in the application, we might want to have a menu that display all of the food items, and we want to let the users click onto a button to submit an order. How long do you think this would typically take with the traditional development effort? Have a wild guess. You can actually comment down below. What do you think? Month? Years? What do you think? Let us know what you think.
A week, maybe?
Okay, that's a very good guess. But so the demo that I'm going to lead into is actually something similar. So in this demonstration, we actually use 10 minutes to create a fully functional application. Now, let me show you how this is being done. So this is the Power Apps Canvas app portal, and you should already see something very similar. So if we go back to the portal here, we can go ahead and click create and then start from blank. And then once we actually finish this part, then we'll be greeted with a app creation portal that looks like this. Now here, let me just give you a bit of introduction. So on the left, you can actually see the menu items. So you can think of it as the PowerPoint. So typically in PowerPoint, on the left-hand side, the navigation bar will see different screens, and then within the screens, we might be able to see different components. Now, Power Apps follows a similar idea. So on the left-hand side, you can actually see the different screens there. So once we actually have the screen sorted, we can then drag in different components like a logo, images, and then we can drag in text, or we can format it however we want it. So here you can see that I've already changed the background into an orange background. I've added a company logo. I've added a landing page essentially for this application. Now, everything from this stage is still very similar to how we actually create a PowerPoint. Now, this is a beautiful part of the Power Apps. Now, how do we actually surface data out from all of these different data sources that we might have? Now, this is where we can actually leverage the data connectors that I previously mentioned. So here we are we're connecting the application with OneDrive for Business, and in particular, we have actually tied that to a specific Excel data source. So once I have that part done, I can actually create a list item that visualize all of the data that I have in Excel. So you can imagine that in the Excel, I already have the item type, the item price, maybe a URL to the image. Now, once I have that sorted, then I can actually easily create a very interesting layout for my application. Now, because I fast forward this video, the whole process takes about 3 minutes, and you already have a very beautiful layout that you could use. Now, of course, with the application, we don't expect it to just visualize data. There must be some sort of interactive components that ties to the application. So we can actually add in buttons. We can add in different workflows as well later on, so that we can actually make the application more interactive. So this is the Power Apps part. Another cool part of the Power Apps is that we can actually integrate AI features with the Power Apps too. So we have something called the AI Builder, which allows us to, again, easily create AI model or leverage any of the existing model that you might have. So there are a couple of AI models that we can use, for example, form processing, object detection. And again, because this is riding on the Power Platform low-code capability, so all of these doesn't require intensive training. So if you can, so this is a video showing how we can actually do that. So again, this is actually the Power Apps portal. So let me just switch back to the screen here. If you want to leverage any of the AI models, you can actually go ahead and click the AI icon here. So this one. And then we can actually build and see the different models that we have that we can actually integrate with the applications. So currently we have some models that requires a bit of training, so including form processing, but the training is a lot simpler than what you would expect. So for example, with the form processing model, we only need to pass in 5 to 10 documents with a similar layout, and then we'll be able to do all of the taggings within the same portal we have. There are also some models that actually do not require any further training. So these are models such as business card reader, entity extraction, sentiment analysis. So for example, we just need to put it so we can actually select some text, and then we will be able to see the analyzed result. And you can directly use it in a workflow or app or an application straight away. Now let me show you an example of how we actually use the form processing model. So here in the portal, you just have to click in to the model that of your choice. So here I'm passing in the form processing model. And once we have this model, the next step that we need to do is actually to identify the key text, the field that we might need. So we actually add in the documents. So we upload 5 to 10 documents. That's all we need. So these documents, they need to have the similar layout so that during the tagging process, it will be easier for the system to identify. Now, once we actually uploaded it, the next step is actually to define what are the key fields or information you want to actually extract from this. Okay, so let me take a pause here while this loads, and let's see if there are any questions from the floor.
Wow, there's one question. Very interesting one. Mary, can you help to answer? The audience asks, I want to build an app to capture carbon emission for the management team.
Okay.
I just need to store data in the Azure Data Lake from what Frankie previously said. So can Power Apps be able to see all these data and help?
Yes, so we do have out-of-the-box connectors that allows you to connect to services like the Azure. So it really depends on where you're storing your data. So if it's simple as SQL Server, then you can just, when you create the application, you can search for something called the SQL Server connector, and then we'll be able to connect to it. So hopefully this answers your question.
So thank you. So I remember that there are cases that even the the administrator and even the secretary can help to use Power Apps to automate the reporting and for the carbon emission. So I think this is kind of interesting and very easy to use case to help those without coding experience, right?
Absolutely. So the Power Apps would be a great way for you to get started. So there are a lot of components that you can already leverage, whether it's a gallery of items, or you can even have buttons or out-of-the-box features like graphs that you can actually embed into the application. So it will be a very quick way for you to visualize or to understand what sort of features you actually want to include in the application. And of course, as I'm showing here, there are also a bunch of AI capabilities that you can later on infuse into the application. So here, let me finish up the building of the house to show you how simple it is to create the form processing model. So once we have actually uploaded the files and we have defined the fields that we want to do, so we just need to do the tagging within the same portal. And once we have done that, we can actually deploy the model, and then we can easily embed that into our Power Apps. So in the Power Apps Designer portal, you'll be able to see a place where we actually integrate the Power Apps into the, where we can actually integrate the models into the Power Apps. Now, The app interface is one thing. Another key part of it is, of course, the workflow that ties to that application. So as I mentioned earlier, even with the application, quite often we actually have to delegate some of the processing, some of the logics into the Power Automate workflows. So there are many advantages of using the automation. So in the case of the Power Apps, it gives us more advanced features. So for example, when a user clicks onto a button, perhaps we want to trigger an alert, perhaps we want to send an email to particular users. That can be done via Power Automate. But of course, workflow can exist by itself, so it can be standalone. It will be able to help us boost productivity. We'll be able to bridge any of our modern systems with our legacy systems. And again, AI is a key component. We can actually integrate all of these AI analytics into the workflow. Now, automation is never an island. So with Power Automate, we actually offer different types of automation technologies that you can potentially leverage in your solution. So the digital process automation is something that I have already mentioned many, many times. So this is actually the data connectors. Currently, we have more than 500 plus built-in connectors that allow you to connect with different systems, whether it's first party or third party. But if you see that, oh, okay, I have a system in mind, but I can't actually see any of the out-of-the-box connectors available. Now, we do have the option to create custom connectors. So as long as your system has RESTful API exposed, we'll be able to create that. So this applies to any cloud system, and if you have on-prem system, that also works. Another part is, of course, the AI. So we can leverage the models in the AI builder. And also, if you leverage the Azure capability, like the cognitive service, then we can also use that. Now, the third part of it is actually RPA. So RPA is a key part in the automation landscape. So there are a lot of systems that perhaps do not have any API exposed. So in this sense, we can actually use the RPA. We can ask the bot to learn what we have performed in the user interface, and then the bot is going to repeat the task that we have done. So let me quickly jump into the demo session so that you can have a better view of how the workflow actually looks. So workflow itself, it might sound very daunting. What exactly is a workflow? But as we actually go along with the demo, it will become a lot easier for you to understand what exactly is a workflow. So imagine we are in the Power Apps portal. The easiest way for us to navigate to the Power Automate workflow is actually to click onto the grid here. So on the top left, you can see the Power Automate application. So once we have done that, it will automatically navigate us to the flow.microsoft.com. So this portal is very similar to what we have just seen. So it's very similar to the Power Apps portal, but this is dedicated to the workflow. The creation process is very similar as well. You can see the buttons are very similar. So we can go ahead and click Create. And you can choose the different type of workflows that you want to create. We can, of course, start from the template. So, for example, if you know that you want to create an approval workflow, I can just quickly search for it. And once I've searched for it, I will be able to see all of the templates that might involve that particular system. Now, some of you might be using a SQL. So these are a lot of templates that you can kickstart with. And you can actually change that later on if you want.
Hey, I've got feedback from the audience that they would like to, play with you for the demo. So
Sure.
may I ask if it is the same link that you shared before for this Power Automate?
Yes, so you can actually go to flow.microsoft.com. So let me just type in here, flow.microsoft.com. So once you have gone to the URL, then you'll be prompted to sign in with your work or email account. And now why don't we create a workflow together? Let's create a simple one. Let's create a workflow which actually, once I manually trigger that workflow, I'll send an email to particular users. So let's go ahead and click Create. So once you go into that create page, you can see that there are five types of workflows. We can actually choose any of these, and then we can change the format later on. So for now, I'm just going to select one that is called the automated cloud flow. So once we actually click to create one from blank, we'll be prompted to add a workflow name. So for example, I can create, a testing workflow. And then the next thing that I need to do is to choose the flow's trigger. So for example, with the automated cloud flow, we might be able to kickstart the workflow when a new item is created in SharePoint. But there are many, many triggers that we can select. So this is actually a good point for me to actually showcase what exactly is a component of a workflow. So workflow itself might sound daunting, but what it essentially is basically trigger, actions, and conditional logic. So with trigger, we define what is going to kickstart the workflow. It could be a menu trigger, like the user clicks onto a button on the Power Apps. It could be a scheduled workflow so that it happens during a particular cadence, during a particular time during the day. And actions are what sort of interactions we have with the different services. And of course, with any of the system, conditional logic will be important as well, so that we can actually have the branching activity. Now let's go back into the portal. Here, typically when we go into the portal, the first step is always to select a trigger. So you can see that there are a bunch of built-in, standard, and premium triggers that we can select. So for example, some of the built-in one includes manually triggering a workflow, some of the HTTP webhook. So for example, if someone actually posts a request to the particular endpoint, we can actually kickstart the workflow. It can also be a recurrent workflow. So we can actually specify, okay, what is the recurrence cadence? What is the start time of this, etc. So let me just delete it here. So I will actually select the simplest one, the manually trigger workflow. So once we have this trigger settled, this is what is going to kickstart our workflow. Now, after that, we can actually specify the different steps that the workflow is going to execute, whether it could be to analyze different sentiments in text. There could be AI builder capabilities that comes within the workflow, or simplicity. In the more simple cases, it could be adding a new row in your table. It could be getting the result from your table. So again, we can actually filter out the different services and connectors that we might have in mind. So here, perhaps I want to send an email at the end of the day. So I can just select email, and then I can go ahead and click all. So you can see that there are a bunch of out-of-the-box actions that are already available, whether it's leveraging the Outlook, the O365 Outlook connector, so that I can get emails, send emails with options, or I can be using some other services like sending me an email notification. So there, hopefully, we'll be able to show you there is a vast amount of actions and a vast amount of services that you can connect with the Power Automate and Power Apps. Now, let's say I'm just simply creating an email from the Outlook connector. So I can just go ahead and select the action that I have in mind. So for example, here I want to actually send an email. Okay, so send an email, let me see. Okay, let's use this one here. So send an email with a shared mailbox. Now here, the reason why we keep mentioning that this is something low code is that it is highly configuration based. So for example, with this sending an email option, we just have to define who are we sending this to. This could be hard coded, but it can also be put dynamically based on the input of the workflows. So apart from that, we can actually define the different subjects, the different bodies of the email. Again, everything can be dynamic here. So if you have an input that you want to pass in during the execution of the workflow, that can be easily done. So once we have actually completed the workflow, the next step is to actually save it and to test it. So Another good part about using this Power Automate portal is that it has a flow checker. So for example, if there is required information that I have to fill in during the workflow, and I haven't actually submitted it, if I try to click save, it's going to let me know that, okay, there are some errors in your configuration. You actually need to go and sort that out before you can test it. So here I can easily do that. So let me just put in some information. Okay. Now some subject as well. Test, test. So again, you can see since this Power Platform service is tied to the overall Microsoft Azure Active Directory, so I'll be able to actually fetch information from the Active Directory that I already have. Okay. So once we actually save this, then we can go ahead and test this workflow to see if it's working in real time. Now, this is a very, very simple workflow, but it is a very good way of visualizing how the digital process automation part works. This is how the built-in API and built-in services will be able to integrate with the workflows. Now, let's use the Power Apps example that we have just seen. Let's build on top of that. Say we actually have a food ordering app interface sorted. Now, the next step we actually want to do is to create a workflow that once a user submits, click onto a specific button, then we want to send an email to notify the staff that, okay, a new order has come in. So here we can actually, let me show you again. So we can actually create the workflow from right within the app interface so that you can see here the trigger is actually the Power App, so that whenever a button is clicked, then we can actually kickstart that workflow. And here we're sending an email to particular users so that we're saying that, okay, there has been a new menu item. There has been a new order and we want to pass in certain information to that specific email. Now, we just have to invoke several clicks to be able to add that workflow in. So you can see here on top, this is what we call a formula. So on select is actually a property that defines what happens when a button is clicked when that app component is selected. And once that is selected, what we want to do is to actually trigger to run a workflow and pass in some sort of parameter into it. Now, this is how easy we can actually create a workflow and tie to it. The whole process takes about 10 minutes, and in the past, perhaps it would take weeks or even months to create an application that involve integration with this sort of different systems. But now the whole process can actually be minimized to 10 minutes. Okay.
So, just a question from the floor. So, say for example, just like the previous example, if I would like to, capture some carbon emission data,
Yep.
and then I, write the program with the Power Apps, and then I use the Power Automate to automate the workflow. That means, is it a scenario that I can use that when the data is collected, when the report is collected on a regular basis, we can automate the workflow and email to the stakeholders, which is relevant to receive the report. Is it a possible use case for us as well?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually a really good use case that we can leverage. So for example, in your case, perhaps you want the workflow to happen in a particular cadence. So you want to generate that, you want to consolidate the data from a particular data source. So we can have a scheduled workflow, and then we can see what sort of where you are storing your data and see if we have actually got some out-of-the-box connectors that we can leverage to be able to fetch data out from these systems. And after that, we'll be able, so there are some actions that allow you to create a report via the Power Automate workflow. So you can have a look at that. And once we have done that, perhaps we can actually send email notification to specific users to notify them that, okay, this report has been generated. Or we can even post in-app notification for your use case.
So one more questions from the floor, and can I really set a period of time for this workflow to be effective?
Yes. So let me just quickly switch back into to the portal here. So let's select something simple. Let's select the cadence workflow. So this might be easier for you to understand what sort of capability we have. So schedule. Okay, so if you're thinking about a scheduled workflow, the trigger is called recurrence. So in the recurrence workflow, you can actually define the cadence that you want this to happen. So for example, this could happen weekly, this could happen monthly, and you can also specify the time zone and also the starting time of that particular workflow, so that you can imagine if I set it to weekly, then I can also specify on which days in particular do I want this workflow to invoke, and also at what sort of hours. So this makes it very simple for you to consolidate, to define a workflow that happens at a specific time and follow specific cadence as well. So any other questions from the floor?
One more from the chat room, Harry. He asks, how easy is it to create a screen mock-up?
In terms of the application.
Yes.
So again, it depends on the scenario that you have in mind. It would be very simple if the Power Apps itself already have most of the out of the box features that you're looking for. So let me go into Power Apps again. So that you can see what sort of components we are actually looking at. So in the Power Apps, there are many out of the box components that you can leverage. So for example, we could have a data table, gallery. So gallery is great for displaying items that you might have in a list. So for example, here I can actually tie this to a specific data source. So let me go back here. So you can see, once I actually select the gallery item, it always asks me to connect it with the data source, so where we are going to surface this data out. It'll be very simple if you already have a data schema or a data set ready to go. So this could be using the Microsoft Dataverse, but for this, the most simple way of doing this is actually to import data from Excel. So if you already have an Excel with Excel data sheet that you can already leverage, then you can actually tie that to it straight away. So gallery is one thing. Another components that we could potentially leverage is actually images, camera, barcode scanner, videos, or even if you actually need to display PDF or use any of the geospatial component, we do actually have features so that you can actually display data points onto a map, onto Azure Map. And there are many advanced features like field data model in 3D, so we can actually render a 3D model in the Power Apps. Now, apart from that, this is the media control we have. Apart from that, we also have some charts. So for example, if you have a Power BI report or dashboard ready, you can actually integrate Power BI tile into the application. And of course, logos, icons are core to make it very, very interesting. Now, this is the AI Builder part, which I mentioned. So you can actually easily embed some sort of, let's say, form processing model into the application. Mixed reality. And in terms of the labels, like the input, there are actually many different ones that we offer, like the text input, pen input. So in your scenario, some of the customer actually needs to use Power Apps for signing. So we can actually do that, integrate that into the Power Apps. And radio button, rating, container, timer as well. So if your use case actually requires some sort of countdown, then this might be something you could use. So as long as we have, so this is a very simple example of how the application interface can be used. Now, we do have other scenarios. So for example, if you do have some sort of interface in mind, we do have template applications that you can just quickly leverage. So let me go back into the template one very quickly. So you can see that we do have some very advanced layout, like the budget tracker, like Surface Desk, live request. So all of these, you can actually go ahead, use the applications, get started with it, and then add the color, any components that you want to change it. So this one is actually an interesting one that I can show you. So this is called the product showcase app, but it's actually a very beautifully done application. So you can see I can actually embed video. I can have an overview of the applications. So it's very easy to get started into creating the application. Okay. Now, let's go back to the workflow. Let's see if there are any additional questions. So I've mentioned about the cloud connectors, so the out-of-the-box data connectors that we can use. Apart from that, there are a lot of systems that might not even have API exposed, or it becomes very expensive to actually create an API on top of these systems. So in this sense, this is where robotic process automation comes in. So let me just very quickly show you a demo in terms of the Power Automate desktop. So for this workflow in particular, you actually need to download a piece of software called the Power Automate desktop. And once you download that software, you'll be able to invoke something called the desktop recorder. So this desktop recorder, it allows the workflow to learn what sort of actions you have taken in particular applications. So for example, here I have a window-based applications. It will be able to track what sort of buttons I've clicked on that application, and it's going to translate the actions that I've taken into a workflow actions. So here, if you do realize that you might have a lot of user interfaces, like web browser automation that you might need to perform, then the RPA would be a good place for you to get started. And of course, finally, we do have the AI capability, but I'm not going to go through this in depth because we have already shown you how the AI builder can be incorporated. There are many examples of automation tasks that we can think of. It could be as simple as personal automation, like copy and paste information from different apps. It could be passing information from legacy to modern systems, but it can actually be a more enterprise-scaled automation task. Let's say it can be involved in supply chain management, to automate the PO, to process PO, to define a defined process that you actually need to go through. So we do have a lot of capabilities in terms of the different features that we offer. Okay, now before I jump into the Power BI part, let me take a pause and take some questions from the floor.
Yes, it seems to be very easy to use for the Power Platform. And may I ask if it is for the data extraction, is it limited to Microsoft Data Lake, or can it be connected to third-party data?
Yes, so it can actually be connected to a third-party system. So this is also the beautiful part about the Power Platform. It's not only limited to the Microsoft services, but also to other third-party systems as well. Now, the easiest way for you to find out whether the system you have in mind is actually catered for, you can actually go to the Power Automate part, and then you can actually go ahead and click Connectors. So let me just leave this. Okay. So in the connectors, you can actually see all of the different services that we can potentially integrate our services with. You can see Gmail, or even GitHub, Slack, all of these different ones. So even Amazon S3. So we can actually integrate the Power Platform. We can actually build applications workflow on top of these systems. Now, as I mentioned, there are actually pre-built actions that comes with these connectors. So let me take an example. Let's say Google Drive. The pre-built actions include these ones here. So for example, we can actually add record in the in the Google Drive. So all of these are actually very well documented in our connector reference page. So you'll be able to see for each of the connectors what are the actions that I can actually take, like copy files, get files, list files in folder. So all of these information are very well documented here. So if you do have a system in mind, I would strongly recommend you to actually go ahead and see if this is available. And if you see that some of the actions are not available, then you can have a look at whether this sort of system provide RESTful API. So if they do have REST API, then we can create custom connectors to connect with this sort of services. Right. Any other questions?
So how can we make requests to make custom connector?
Ah, I see. So the custom connectors, you can actually create it within the Power Apps development portal. So you just have to go into custom connectors, and then you can create a new custom connector. So you can see you can import an Open API file or a Postman collection or import from GitHub. So once you actually define that, you can actually specify, okay, let me give you an example here actually. So once we actually upload the API format that we want to select, we can then define the security and also the definition of that particular connector. So we can say, okay, what is the security that I'm going through? What sort of authentication type I'm using? Is it OAuth 2 basic authentication API key? Now, this makes it very simple to actually create the different connectors. And the plus point is that we can actually integrate with the Azure API manager, so that the APIM in Azure, so that if you have actually defined an API, we can easily publish that as a custom connector in the Power Platform. Okay, now let me use the remaining time to talk more about the Power BI. So this is also a very important part. In particular, if you want to try to make sense of your data, the Power BI essentially is another local tool that allows you to create interactive report and also real-time dashboard. Again, using all of these low-code template that we already have. Now, the steps of creating a Power BI report is fairly similar to the application. So often we define what sort of data we're connecting to. Do we have the data connectors available? Then next we'll think about, okay, do we need to transform the data and check any of the data relationship? Now, once we have got the data defined and the data relationship defined as well, then we can go ahead and use the out-of-the-box visuals that we already have provided. So this could be any of the default visuals. It could be AI visuals, and we can even infuse actions to it. So here, typically when we create a dashboard, this data, so the report designing process is actually done in the Power BI desktop. So this is again another piece of software that you can freely download from our website. So you can just search for Power BI desktop and you can go ahead and create a new report from there. Okay. So I see some other questions coming in. Let me take a pause here.
Yes, there is a very good question here. So the audience said I'm using AWS and trying Azure now. So before I get familiar to Azure, does Power Apps allow integration between AWS DB to Power Apps?
So again, I would recommend you to actually have a look at the connectors that we have available. It's very highly likely that we already have a connector in place, but of course, it'd be great if you can try it out as well. So in fact, if you go to the connection page, the documentation, you can easily look at, so what are the AWS services that perhaps we might want to integrate with. So let me just search it here. So you can see we have a bunch of interaction with the Azure, but we can search for AWS. Okay, so we do have integration with Redshift, S3, SQS. So again, I would recommend you to have a look at what are the actions that are available to see if this connector has offered enough information for you to go ahead and kickstart your development process. Now, if you're thinking about visualizing data, another part, so apart from using the Power Apps, very often we use the Power BI so that we can actually have in-depth analytics and report in terms of the data. So typically, we get started with the data connection first, and then we select all of the different visuals that we want to use, and then we then configure the security permission. So who do we want to share that report to? Now, looking at a more high-level perspective, so this is how the Power BI typically lies. So you can see that on the left here, so this is a very high-level architecture diagram, so you might see some synergy to what Frankie has shared earlier on. So we might have a data source. So let's focus on the blue arrow here. We can actually ingest flat files, different data, perhaps from SQL Server, MySQL, CRM data, or even different logs into a Azure Data Factory, or perhaps we can store that in the data lake. So additional processing can be done in the Azure Data Factory for processing. And then let's say once we actually have finished with the processing, we want to store that in a data warehouse. So the Power BI is going to take in whatever output that you have set in the data warehouse. And of course, if you have any real-time data that, that might be coming in from a stream analytics, we can also create real-time dashboard that points to this stream analytics. So once we have got the data sorted, next step is about data transformation. So we can perform very simple data transformation using the Power Query. So this is actually the Power BI desktop interface. So we can perform data like filtering, summarizing, adding columns, stuff like that. And then we can even define the table relationship. So by default, we do have auto detect of a relationship, but we can also manually create it. So the reason why we actually need to define the table relationship is that when we actually have a report sorted, perhaps we want to have more drill down analytics. Perhaps we want to configure the filtering so that when we click onto one visual, the other visual is actually going to change according to something that we actually click in the previous visual. So this sort of relationship, we can set it as we actually import the data. And the fourth part is the most interesting part, which is to build the report with the visuals. So we do have a lot of out-of-the-box visuals that you can already leverage. So to make the data very interesting. Of course, we also have, so if you have Python or R visuals, we can infuse that into it. And we have a lot of first-party and third-party visuals that you can access in App Source. Now, there are some sort of AI-infused visuals that I do want to talk to you about. So very briefly, we have a Q&A. So that here we can actually click ask a question so that let's say we want to have a question posted to Power BI. Let's say, okay, how many visits do we have by island? So this actually correspond to the key field that we have in the data source. So you can see that the beauty of it is that it's going to automatically generate visuals based on your question. So you can actually have a look and play around with it. And we do have some AI-infused data exploration, like anomaly detection. And we do have smart narrative as well. So this is very interesting. So what it's going to do is that it's going to give you a contextual paragraph in terms of how they are analyzing the data visuals that you have. So for example, here it's actually saying that, okay, between January 2018 and April 2020, some sort of field has the largest increase. So this will actually give you some takeaways, something refreshing when you're actually using the dashboard. Now, another key part of it is, of course, the streaming of the data. So just a very quick demo here. If you already are using the Event Hub, then we can actually define the different data outputs that we want to streamline from the Event Hub. So once we have configured the data flow, we can actually integrate this sort of data into our Power BI dashboard. So we just have to configure what sort of point that back into the real-time analytics. And then once we have got that sorted, then we can define the visuals on top, whether it's a line graph showing the traffic analytics. So you can see this is how easy we can actually drag in the visuals. We just choose the visuals that we want to use, and then we select the fields that we want to visualize on that particular visuals. So here, this is how easy we can actually get real-time analytics. Now, putting this in a broader term, of course, your report can look a lot more exciting than this. So you can leverage our other visuals like the map component, tables, as well to make it interesting. Now, another part is that I've mentioned that the Power Platform components are all integrated, and this is one of the key beauty of the Power Platform. So you can imagine that we can actually integrate different workflows with the Power BI report, or vice versa, we can actually embed an application into the Power BI to make an interactive application in the dashboard that you have. So one of the example is actually to have a workflow that gets triggered when a specific data-driven alert is triggered in the Power BI. So in this example, we are actually setting a threshold amount. So once this threshold amount is exceeded, then we are going to fire up a notification in Teams and post that to the project manager. So you can see that, okay, now that I've actually, the budget amount has been exceeded, then we automatically fire up an alert via the Power BI, and then this information can get passed into the Power Automate and posted into Teams. So hopefully in this hour, I've very quickly shown you how the different parts of the Power Platform are able to integrate, and hopefully you'll be able to use it to really quickly create prototypes that you can leverage in the hackathon. Now, for those of you who might not have a work or school email available, you can actually navigate to the product.office.com. So you can feel free to screen cap this link so that you can actually create a new tenant account for use. So you can go ahead and select our Office 365 E3, and then you can select free trial to create a trial tenant account. Once you have done that, it will actually request for some information, like you need to have an email address to get started with. And this email address, you can actually use the Microsoft account. So you can create that in www.live.com to create your MSA, and then post that in to apply for your trial license. So once you have done that, the next part is also very important. So you do need to go back and apply for the Power Apps trial and also the Power BI, Power Automate trial, so that it's a 30 days trial that allows you to access to unlimited features of the Power Platform. So have fun hacking. Let me see if there is any last minute questions. If not, thank you for joining us in this session. So these are all of the resources that you can access. And if you want to learn more about the Power Platform, if you think that this is something useful that you might potentially integrate, we do have a lot of training labs. So these are step-by-step tutorials that you can follow. Apart from that, of course, Microsoft Learn is always a good place for you to kickstart and learn more about the Microsoft resources. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
So thank you for your great sharing. So I guess all of you just now have heard actually many different topics, all the way from the cloud environments to how you can use different tools. So I know that it actually might be a lot of information, and it might be quite difficult to absorb everything in one go, but we hope that this is the start of the learning journey, and there are actually more resources that you can actually access, and hope that you can actually start building up your solutions within Hackasia and beyond, so that you can actually create more solutions that is tech-enabled, supporting your own sustainability agenda. So thank you so much for that. So actually, would you mind staying on the stage? We would like to do like a great thank you for you guys for coming over today. So we would like to invite all of the Microsoft team to come to the stage. We have a small prizes for you guys. Thank you so much for coming over today. Okay, great. So great. So thank you so much also for the audience for joining us. Maybe we'll take a group picture together first. Yes. Taking a lot of good pictures.
Thank you.
So thank you so much today for coming to join us, and hope you guys sharing would empower our next generation of innovation system leaders. So thank you so much. Thank you. So Yurko. So for all the audience currently online, stay tuned. We will actually be having a next session. So for those who are actually in a different time zone and cannot join us today, please do stay tuned for the kind of replay. So upcoming next, we'll have a 5 minutes pause before we welcome the next speaker on the stage. We'll have Google to share with us the different tools that they can use to build up different solutions supporting your hackathon as well. So now take a 5 minutes break, but don't log off. Go just like walk around, stretch your leg. We will be back very soon. Thank you.